this session, our facilitator is Advocate Pansy Tlakula. She's a South African national, and she holds a degree from the University of.
No, talk about details. They don't matter at this point.
Okay. Anyways, since she's very modest, I'll just quickly say Advocate Tlakula is the former chairperson of the African Commission, and she's also the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information for the Commission. I know she's very modest, but I just want to tell you that we are bringing you someone who is very, very into the system to talk to you about it. She also understands the context of South Africa, so I'm pretty sure we will enjoy this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm not feeling well. I think I have a throat infection or something like that. So thanks for the introduction. I always tell people that, can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
The only thing that you have to remember about me is that I'm a grandmother of 2 children. Boy and a girl. I can even tell you their ages. One is 11, the other one is 2 years. That's all. The rest of the things don't matter anymore. I always tell people that if I still have to impress anybody for a job, it's too late. If I have not been able to impress anybody up to this stage, I must just forget about it. So my CV doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
It matters when, at your age, your CVs must be no, yeah. So I've got so many things, friends, that are going wrong. I sat on top of my glasses this morning. So I have these things that I don't know. I can't, every time I have to look down and, because they're just magnifying glasses. So I've been asked to talk to you, and I don't have a presentation because I want us to have just a conversation so that you understand how you can contribute to the work of the African Commission as civil society organizations. And I'm going to make a number of assumptions that you now know about the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. You know about the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Can I make that assumption, Professor? Yes. And the mandate of the Commission, can make that assumption as well?
A little bit about that.
About the mandate?
Yes, just to revise.
Yes. The mandate of the Commission is quite broad. But in broad strokes, it promotes and protects the rights in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The Charter is very interesting because it talks about human and people's rights. So it protects individual rights and group rights. And it's, I think, the only human rights instrument that also talks about obligations. I haven't come across any human rights instrument that talks about obligations. So apart from promoting and protecting human rights, it also has the responsibility to interpret the Charter, the African Charter. When I say Charter, I'm talking about the African Charter. It can also come up with documents like general comments, resolutions, declarations to elaborate further on the rights in the Charter. Some rights are not, they are general, they're stated generally in the Charter. So the declarations, and I'll give you examples, assist to elaborate on the meaning of the rights in the Charter. Some of the rights are actually not even mentioned in the Charter. For instance, the right to privacy. It's one of the rights that are not in the charter. And we know that privacy has become very important, especially on issues of data protection. So if there is a case that will come, or a communication, a complaint that will go to the commission, it means the commission will have to look at the other rights and look at how it can interpret those rights to come to the meaning of the right to privacy, such as the right to human dignity. From human dignity, you can deduce privacy. So that's what the commission does. So the promotion aspect of it, it promotes human rights in the charter by receiving complaints of violations of the charter from individuals or from NGOs representing individuals, alleging that any right in the charter has been violated by a state party. A state party being a country that has ratified the charter, like South Africa. In fact, the African Charter enjoys what we call universal ratification because it has been ratified by almost all the countries on the African continent except Morocco. And the reason for that is that you might know that Morocco, a couple of years ago, left the African Union. And it was readmitted into the African Union maybe 3-4 years ago. So it's the newest member of the African Union. And Morocco has not ratified the charter. So out of 55 countries, Morocco is the only one that has not ratified the charter. So the protection side, that's what it is. If you are South African, and I'll come to that, and you can, if you think that your rights have been, the rights in the charter, it's not, we're not talking about rights in our constitution, no. It has to be the rights in the charter, in the African charter. If that right has been violated, you can lodge a complaint, but I'll come to that to say what are the requirements for that. The promotion aspect is the commission also receives report from state parties on what they have done to implement the rights in the charter. That falls under promotion. But the commission also visits state parties to promote the charter. So there are 11 members of the commission. So each member is allocated countries that they are responsible for. I was a member of the commission from 2005 to 2017. It's a long time, 12 years. Which means that by the time when I joined the commission in 2005, the child who was born then was 12 years and in grade 6 by the time I left the commission, which is a long time. So, because members can, have you spoken about how members are elected?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. So, this is how you become a member of the commission. Your country, let me start by saying, upfront, the process is not transparent. Yes, it's not transparent because there is no advert in a country that says anyone who is interested to becoming a member, can you apply to the Department of Justice? There's nothing like that. People just approach you, get a phone call one morning to say, hey, you know what, we want to put your name to be a member of the African Commission. That's what happened in my case. I received a phone call from the Department of Justice. So once you agree, you give the Department of Justice your CV. It has to be translated into 4 languages of the African Union, which is French, English, Portuguese, and Arabic. And your CV is given to the Department of DECO, which is now Foreign Affairs. That's what, it's called in other countries. Here we have a long Department of International Relations and Cooperation. That's what we call it in South Africa. So foreign affairs then takes your name to Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa is the seat of the African Union, the political order. At the African Union then, that's when the names are voted to by, supposed to be the heads of states, but the heads of states, of course, have delegated this to ambassadors. I mean, you can imagine heads of state sitting and voting for Pansy Tlakula to be a member, so it doesn't happen like that. So they've delegated this to ambassadors, so they vote. According to the charter, a person must get 2/3 majority to be voted as a member. So that's what happened. And I did that 2005, I was voted, and then you can be a member for 2 terms only. But it's not, the renewal is not automatic. After your term, you still have to be nominated again and still be voted. So there are people who make themselves available for the second term, but they never make it because nothing is guaranteed. It doesn't mean that because you're a member, you'll become a member again. So that's how members are. So then what happens is that the commission, one of the clauses in the charter says that the commission must cooperate with international and other institutions that are whose mandate is to promote and protect human rights. So to give effect to that article in the charter, the Commission then adopted a resolution on the criteria for granting NGOs observer status. Now, this is what I have to talk about. So, as an NGO, you can apply to the Commission to be granted an observer status. How do you do that? You write a covering letter, but there are also requirements. The requirements are as follows. You have to prove, and the application must include your registration certificate, a copy of your registration certificate, which shows that your NGO has legal existence. It has been registered with in this country we call it SIPO. What is it called now? That thing that registers companies. CPIC, yeah. In other countries that are different. The people here are not only South Africans, isn't it? Are they South Africans?
Mostly South African.
Yeah. Okay, in other countries, of course, registration of NGOs has another process. But here the CPI, that one I forget. So you have to include the covering letter must be accompanied by the registration certificate of your NGO, the names of the governing structure. It can be a board of trustees. You have to have the list of names of your board of trustees. You also have to enclose your sources of funding. Who funds your NGO? And what are the objects of your NGO? What is the mandate? Because the mandate has to be the promotion and protection of the rights in the charter. Once you have fulfilled all those documents, you send your application with those documents to the secretary of the commission. The secretary is equivalent to the CEO of the commission. The secretary will look at your application. If there are documents that are missing, the secretary will come back to you and say, look, you have not fulfilled, can you send these documents? Once all the documents have been received, the secretary because one thing that I haven't mentioned is that the commissioners are 11, none of them are full-time. They serve the commission on a part-time basis. The people who run the administration of the commission is the secretary, who is the CEO, and her staff. I'm saying her staff because at the moment, the CEO is a woman and she is South African. Those who know, I used to be the CEO of the South African Human Rights Commission. She's the CEO of the commission. She will now look at the documents, and if she is of the opinion that your application meets all the requirements, she will then make a recommendation to the commission that your NGO must be granted observer status. The granting of the observer status happens in the public sessions of the commission. Professor, do they know the private and the public sessions, or should I go there?
You can go there. Yeah.
They know that. So in the public sessions, the applications will be distributed to the members, and the members in the public session will say, I have an application from the Center for Human Rights. I have looked at the application, it fulfills all the requirements, all the documents are there. I therefore recommend to the commission that the center should be granted observer status. And it will. Everybody's happy, it's granted observer status, and there's a big clap and celebration in the hall for those who are attending. Now, maybe I should, at this point, talk about the CAL issue, I'm sure, because you want to know the CAL issue and its background. The Coalition of African Lesbians. The coalition applied for observer status a number of years ago. And naive as I am, South African, I thought, this is an NGO, it meets all the requirements in the charter. Its mandate is to promote and protect the rights in the charter, and they stipulated the right to equality, the right to non-discrimination, equal protection of the law. So they give me the application to move. I move the application in the public session. Then we are told that, look, the commission has not taken a decision on whether sexual orientation is one of the rights protected in the charter. So we can't grant this organization observer status. We have to postpone that. So we postpone. Then the center is requested to interpret the charter so as to determine whether sexual orientation is one of the rights in the charter, the grounds for non-discrimination. The charter has sex and gender, it doesn't have. But I said, at the beginning I said, the commission has interpreted the charter progressively to also look at the rights that are not specifically stipulated in the charter. And I gave the example of privacy and human dignity. So the center comes and says, yes, out of that, the grounds are not closed. It's not a closed list, it's including. And sex is there, gender is there, and the center comes to the conclusion that the charter can be interpreted in a way that will include sexual orientation in the grounds for non-discrimination. Fine, we now have a position. So CAL then applies, submits its application, and I don't know if I was the one who moved it on that, I think for the second time. Then I move it, some drama occurs, and in fact, let me tell you something, Professor, something that you haven't, that year of that drama, I didn't know that that drama that happened, that NGOs actually recorded it in a video. So I was requested to attend unrelated, a launch of a book on sexual orientation in Roseburg. Voila. The prelude to that is that drama that we did. I was so ashamed because we behaved so badly. We behaved like 7-year-olds. Because there were those of us who felt that CAL meets all the requirements and it should be granted observer status. And there were those who felt that no, we can't because sexual orientation is not a ground. So the drama was about, and now that I'm outside the commission, I can tell you there's no confidentiality. There were those who said we must postpone the granting of the observer status, the consideration, for the following day. The reason for that was that one of the members who was against, her plane was cancelled. She was going to arrive the following day. So the ones against had made the calculation. Like if that one comes, then they are in. Then, because some of us are our intelligence works, we said we're doing it now. We are not postponing this thing. So that's where the fight and others called cow cockroaches and fighting, and it was very ugly. But eventually, we voted, and Carl was granted observer status. And we thought that was the end of the battle. Then I'm now the chairperson, because you are voted as the chairperson by one of your colleagues. So 2015, I'm voted in as chairperson. I become the chairperson. As the chairperson, you go now to Addis Ababa, to the headquarters of the AU, to present the report, the annual activity report of the commission. Same way as the Human Rights Commission, the information regulator that I work for. We present our annual reports in Parliament, you know that. The public protected. So in that same way, these institutions, the court, the commission, Committee on the Rights of Children, we submit our reports. Addis Ababa. Everybody submits their reports, there's peace. Every time when the African Commission submits its report, there's war in the room. Because once you submit your report, the ambassadors, they then have to take the floor, you lift your name, the name of your country. Soon as but it happens all the time. Soon as I finish, then all the name tags are up. The chairperson says to me, aren't you worried that every time the commission submits a report, there's always drama and everybody wants to take the floor? How does that make you feel? I say it makes me feel good because it shows that you are very interested in our work. So it makes us extremely, you are not just others, it's like a tick box exercise, but to us, you're paying attention. And then the issue of CAL comes. To say, how did you grant? You must withdraw the observer status. I sit firm. I say there is no way. As this body, you can tell us that we don't like this, and that in your work. You can never tell us to withdraw anything, any decision. I mean, it's like going to Parliament as the South African Human Rights Commission. You have done something. Parliament can criticize us, but they cannot say to you, withdraw. This is the same thing. Because it's issues of independence. It's a political organ, the AU. We are a treaty body. So I said, no, we are not doing that. So it went, and of course they insulted me. And so I remember one saying, yeah, I'm bringing my South African issues into the AU because I'm a South African. But you have to have broad shoulders to be able to withstand. But I stood firm. I refused to withdraw the CAL observer status. In the meantime, the Center and other organizations applied to the African Court for an advisory opinion on whether, among others, a political organ such as the AU, whether it can instruct a treaty body to withdraw its decisions. And we thought, and now that gave me ammunition. When they said withdraw the second time, I said, no, but there's a case pending before the court. How can I make that decision when there's a case pending before the court? Then the court, of course, disappointed us and threw out the matter on a technicality to say the center did not have locus standi or standing to ask for observer status. Now we're back to square one. That time my term is coming to an end. So I say to my colleagues, look, the commission can apply for an advisory opinion to the court. Let's take the same facts, because we have standing, and put an application. And of course, that did not happen. I left the commission. The following year, my colleagues went to Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa pressured them to withdraw the observer status of CAL. They relented. They withdrew the observer status of CAL. It was a sad day. But I'm going to show you that that's not the end of the road for LGBTI rights in the commission. So I've spoken about observer status and how. Now, how do you what does the observer status benefit you as an NGO? You can attend the NGO forum. Professor is just coming back from Banjul. Before the ordinary session. The commission can hold ordinary sessions and special sessions, extraordinary. Before an ordinary session of the commission, there's normally a meeting of NGOs called the NGO Forum. That's where all the NGOs from across the continent come together, share experiences on the human rights situation in their countries, share strategies, also pledge each other's solidarity, and out of the NGO Forum, they also have resolutions that they recommend to the Commission for adoption. So, after the NGO Forum, then the Commission starts. The Commission normally it sits for, I don't know, it used to be 15 days in our time. It was 7 days, which was public session, and 8 days private session, where only the commissioners. In the public session, NGOs with observer status can take the floor. You can stand up and talk about human rights in your country or in any other country on the continent. What tends to happen? Because of fear of reprisals, if you are South African, it's better for you not to talk about xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Let a Ugandan do that. Then you can talk about homophobia in Uganda as a South African. So normally that's how the NGOs distribute. Of course, there are those who can talk about the situation in their countries. But in South Africa, I mean, you can talk about anything. Nobody, I don't know if anybody wants to kill you. I always tell my colleagues that, if Zapiro was in Egypt, he would have long been sentenced to death for insulting the president with his cut. So in South Africa, we don't have that. I mean, we are very lucky. We can say anything about our president, about anybody, without, being arrested. And in other countries, they have laws that are called falsehood and publication of false news, and Zimbabweans will tell you about that. He will say, we haven't seen our president for 2 years. We understand that he is sick and he's in Dubai. It's called insult on the president. It's in Nigeria. There was a time Yaradua was not there for a long time, and you are sick somewhere. You dare say, where is the president? The country is on autopilot. You're in trouble. You can't say there are laws that are against that. So that is why. So that's how it happens. And I would encourage you, those of you who have not applied for observer status, you need to do that. Because South Africans, we tend to be very myopic. We are inward looking. And we think we know a lot of things. There is a lot that we don't know, actually. And for me, I am forever grateful for the opportunity that I was given to serve on the commission. Because I know this continent up from north, east, west, south. I know it like this. I was even telling my brother here that the way I can even pick up accents. If you can distinguish a Nigerian accent from a Ghanaian accent, because they are almost the same, you know that, if you even know who makes the best jollof rice between the Nigerians and the never-ending jollof rice war between the Nigerians and the Ghanaians. I even adjudicate that. I'm so many things to talk about that. I need to talk about nice stories. And of course, members of the commission can also be special mandate holders. I was the special rapporteur for freedom of expression and access to information for 10 years. The success story is that we developed what we call a model law for access to information in Africa. Why we did that? Because we saw that very few countries had access to information laws on the continent. And you know who was involved in that? The center. And I'm just giving you how it's important to work with NGOs. The UN Development Fund gave us money, 300,000, I think it was, dollars. And because if that goes to the African Commission, that money will never come out in my lifetime. So, because it's so bureaucratic. So we said, let the money go to the center and the center administers it. And with African NGO experts, we drafted that model. It was hard work. We drafted the model law, it was adopted by the commission because you can't just wake up and draft. You have to put a resolution to your colleagues to authorize you to do that. So we put a resolution, and also that resolution was inspired by NGOs. Very few things in the commission happen that we just wake up. NGOs will come and lobby you and say, can we do this, do this, do that? Sometimes they say, no, we can't. But when they have good ideas like the model law, we ran with it. Model law we drafted. We went through most of the countries on the continent to sell the model law. And we did that with NGOs. Because you see, if you want to visit a country officially as a member of the commission, you have to ask permission from the government, and they keep quiet, they don't answer. So through NGOs, we bypass the system. We came up with a system that says we're going on advocacy missions. So advocacy mission does not require any authorization. You just come and then you just write, and then you achieve the same thing. Chief Justice, you see everybody that you would have seen when we went on an official mission. And that's how we sold the model law. People told me that Nigeria will never adopt an access to information law. We met your deputy president. They've thrown him under the bus now because a very good man that I thought should be your president. And they adopted the model law. There's a colleague of mine in Mozambique who says I'm an eternal optimist. Mozambique will never adopt. They did. I mean, when we started the model law process, we had 5 countries that had access to information. By the time I left the commission, we had 20 countries in 2 years. In 4 years, not in years, that had adopted. So we did that. When I went to all these countries, I was not going with commissioners. I was going with NGOs as my experts. I would say, when I come, say I meet the Minister of Justice, I say, I'm the special rapporteur, this is my technical team. And it ends there. I don't tell them who they are and that they are members. So that's all the documents that the commission has adopted. Declaration on freedom of, principles on freedom of expression. There's another one on elections and access to information. All those documents, we developed them with the technical expertise of NGOs. So that's the importance, and the NGOs, it's important for those NGOs to have observer status. Even, which is my last point, even the communications, the complaints that are lodged with the commission are lodged by NGOs with observer status. But you don't just wake up and submit a complaint. We call them communications, because you have to exhaust internal domestic remedies. You must have gone to all the courts in South Africa. You must have gone to all the courts, including the Constitutional Court. If you don't find any redress, then you can submit on behalf of victims of violations. You can submit a communication, a complaint to the Commission on behalf of victims of human rights violations. Finally, when the Commission goes on visits, promotional visits, of course, the people that work, when you meet government, I mean, they'll tell you nice things. When you want to hear the real stories, you get them from the NGOs. I once attended one time a session, and it was at the UN, and it was Zambia. And the Minister of Zambia was presenting this glowing report about Zambia, which is what governments are there to do, to make their governments look good. And I was sitting next to a sister from Zambia. She wrote the note, says, I can't recognize the country he is talking about, because it was so glowing. So even with state reports, and that's my final point, the countries also submit state reports to the Commission on the measures that they have taken to implement the Charter. The reports are growing. The reports are supposed to talk about achievements and challenges. There will be a little session on challenges. The bulk of the report will be about achievements. But NGOs have to submit what is called shadow reports. Shadow reports, which is an alternative report. When South Africa reports, then we have to get a shadow report which will tell us the real stories. So when South Africa then presents its report, it will tell us, and then, but we disclose those shadow reports. We sometimes we don't disclose who they come from, because sometimes they can be reprisals. But we'll ask those questions to say, you say this about xenophobia, but according to the information that we have received, this is the situation. Can you respond? So that's the very critical, role that the NGOs play in the work of the Commission. I can dare say, without any fear of contradiction, that without the contribution of NGOs, the Commission can never and would have never done what it has achieved. It has achieved what it has because of the NGOs. Let me stop here because I can go on forever. Thanks a lot.
Do we have any questions?
Thank you. My name is Kanyo, and I am the Africa Advocacy Officer at Outright. I must confess I'm quite starstruck to see your presentation and to hear it today, Advocate Tlakula, because recently I was also at the commission on the recent session, and a very powerful documentary was played, which tells this exact story you've just told us about the whole experience of Cal. And I mean, I'd really recommend it to people to watch it, because it's quite powerful, and to see the dynamics of even amongst commissioners themselves, how that unfolded, that was really, really excellent. So thank you so much for the presentation. I think my question is twofold. I mean, a lot of organizations on the margins of this current session have, especially ones focused on the rights of LGBT persons, were really sort of at what I think we've been calling post-Cal context, where it's about strategizing and thinking how do now we move forward from where the work that was done before. And I do emphasize the importance of the work that was done before by people like yourselves and, of course, civil society who are working in that space. And actually, this time was quite powerful because it felt like almost like not necessarily handing over the mantle, but there was a cross-generational dialogue that happened between sort of the older civil society organizations who were at the forefront of that CAL process, with new, younger activists who are trying to see how they can, work in the space. So I think my question is twofold. First, you did talk about the issues of getting commissioners into the commission, in the sense that it's not a transparent process. It's hard for even us as civil society to, put our people forward, if I can put it that way. And there's just very limited entry points to support good commissioners to be in the commission so that we can actually have good decisions. But the second part of it is also the issue of, the current composition of the commission is, from the perspective of these issues, it's a very difficult context to move forward. So, is there advice on how, as civil society, we can try to somehow still support the process of having good commissioners in the commission? And secondly, maybe your thoughts on post-CAL, on strategies, on advice, on especially as younger, newer sort of generation of human rights defenders who want to try and move this issue forward. Any sort of thoughts that could be helpful on that front? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I am Sabelo Banda.
and from Proc. I'm just wondering if you could give a word of advice as regards how the Commission can be at all in a scenario where there is a potential violation of the human rights of people right across the continent, especially on a health perspective, which is happening in secrecy, so to say, and the way that the governments have structured it is such that it's difficult to hold any individual government to account, in the sense that there is an ongoing process now with the amendments to the international health regulations. And the South African position is covered by the general position presented by Eswatini on behalf of the Africa region. And now the concern is the health regulations which were shot down, the amendments which were shot down in May, as presented by the Americans, were shot down by 47 African countries with the support of some Latin American countries. And now the approach is that it's all now covered as Africa. And yet the people of Africa don't even know what is being presented on their behalf. How does the access to information avenue as created and presented by the Commission enable us to get to that position? More so that as we speak right now, I think it's the 14th, 15th of November, they'll be looking at the drafts that have been presented. We don't have time to go through all the different layers which enable us to therefore get to the Commission. By the time we get there, if we follow all these protocols, these health regulations would have been across the board. And it's happening across the continent, it's happening across the world. Just as much as countries are pushing now anti-terror bills, there's so many countries at the moment actually pushing disinformation, misinformation, anti-terrorism bills, which are curbing the criticism of government. So how can the Commission be utilized as a tool by which to protect the African people, as much as to protect the African people where the African CDC is concerned and the African Medicines Agency? How can the Commission be of assistance?
Thanks. Very briefly, practically speaking, how difficult it is to get the observer status for NGOs. I'm only asking because I know that for quite a number of years now. As I know, there's probably one or two NGOs in SA who have that status. So practically speaking, how difficult is it to get that status? Secondly, I also want to find out if there's an exception to the rule of having exhausted internal remedies. So, for example, if the threat is coming from someone very powerful within that country, are there any exceptions to that rule where you can say we've been trying the courts, but nothing is happening, and nothing will improve? Are there any exceptions to that rule?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let me start with the first question. I think the starting point is you have to go to the Department of Justice and the Department of International Relations to just get a sense from them on how they put their candidates out. And I think civil society has to pressure these departments to be transparent in these processes. Because if you don't do that, you never know when the terms are coming to an end, when there has to be some, and I've been saying this for many years, that maybe this has to be in the website. I mean, like the UN does that. It puts all the vacancies that are coming in their website, in all them, and there are many mechanisms within the UN. And maybe it's something, Professor, that we have to take up. to say that maybe in the websites of the Department of Justice and the DECO, they have to put out, notices on when positions are coming up in both in the African human rights system and also in the UN human rights system, because it also happens in the UN. And that would be my advice, and I will also try to push that to the extent that I can. The second question, I've said that the commission adopted that resolution. Is it 375? That resolution on preventing violence. I mean, I'm not quoting the verbatim against people for their sexual identity or imputed. That resolution is there. I don't know what has happened. What happened this time around? Who went to Banjo? Did anybody take the floor, NGOs, on the situation of LGBTQI? Did any NGO take the floor to talk about this?
It was mentioned, yeah.
It was mentioned by one of the NGOs. Yeah. But my strategy, and I've said this, and we were in Addis Ababa with France 2 weeks ago. We have to find a communication, a complaint that we have to take to the commission. And Malawi, I think we all have to gather. Malawi has a case which has been appealed. I think it's been in court for many years. And as I do that, I'm answering your question on what is the exception to exhaustion of. If the remedies are prolonged, they're unavailable, then that's an exception. If you've been waiting for 6 years for your case to be heard, you then go to the commission to say, I couldn't exhaust these internal remedies because they are unavailable, they are ineffective, there's a criteria, there's an exception. So you can use that exception. So for the LGBTQI, I think we need to look at that case in the Malawian courts. And if it has been pending for many years, we mobilize the Malawi NGOs to then submit a communication to the commission on that. And I think Malawi have they done a declaration? It's even more, because you see, for NGOs and individuals to submit cases directly to the African courts, the country must have signed a declaration which allows NGOs and individuals direct access. Malawi has done that declaration. And maybe we should rally around Malawi so that they then take that case to the African courts. But also look at other cases in other areas, in countries that have not done it, and look for a communication, a complaint that we must be lodged with the commission. And then we will know exactly where the commission stands. So for me, it's not the end of the road. A lot of work still has to be done in terms of strategy. But also to flood. You see, at the public sessions, NGOs have to flood the commission with statements on violations against LGBTQI community. I think that's the two strategies that I have in mind. Your question is very complex because it deals with something that is not within the mandate of the commission, strictly speaking. My advice to you, if you want to know what the South African position is on that, maybe you should put an access to information request using the South African Access to Information Law.
Yeah, we have put one in already, and we'll wait for the time to run out and we see what exactly they say. But the issue is here, over and above just South Africa.
Yeah.
This is a threat across the continent. And we've got an African Sovereignty Coalition where we are seeing how best we can, as African lawyers, take this to task, because it won't be enough to deal with it in South Africa and allow it to happen next door or any other country, because this is an Africa-wide thing. And the African CDC, in the positions that it is taking, is compromising the entire continent, just as much as the African Medicines Agency is set to compromise the entire continent. So if we take it piecemeal, one country at a time, We don't know how it's going to impact upon the continent. By the time we finish the entire continent, many people would have died.
I really can't think of an entry point, honestly, for the commission except a resolution by the commission.
And how do we get the commission to give us a resolution?
Friends, help me there. Because I'm looking at the working groups.
Maybe to engage with the socioeconomic rights, socio-economic rights working group.
Working group, yes, that's what I wanted to look at. There are a number of apart from special mechanism, there are working groups and there are also committees, but there is a working group on economic, social and cultural rights of the commission. I don't know who chairs that.
One Denga, the commission from Zambia.
He can give you the details because I'm no longer in that space. I'm no longer, but I think that's one way of approaching it, to get the commission to adopt a resolution. But you have to you also have to draft the resolution for their consideration.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think that's it. I've answered all the questions, I think.
Do you have any more questions?
Okay.
Or you asked how difficult is it to get observer status? It's not actually. It's very straightforward. The only thing is that sometimes because of communication, you find that the documents don't reach the commission or the commission misses the documents. It normally helps. When I was still in the commission, I'll tell South African NGOs that when you submit your